and by some mysterious twist of fate, have currently matched with 10 different men. 36 hours has already lapsed, and not a single one of them has sent the first message.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Laura Jarrett, filling in for Yasmin Vasugian. Today on the show, the dating app Bumble has had something of a change of heart, now allowing men to message first, basically breaking up with its entire premise. How the economics of dating are driving this change. Plus, the cryptocurrency industry is spending big in this year's midterm elections. We're gonna break down the close ties between some of the biggest crypto-aligned super PACs and why two of them list the same Minnesota UPS store as their headquarters. But first, Luigi Mangione is expected to plead guilty on Friday to federal charges connected to the fatal shooting of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson back in December of 2024. Now, that's according to sources familiar with Friday's planned federal court hearing who spoke to NBC News. And just to be clear here, as of this moment, Mangione is still on record as pleading not guilty, and he's presumed innocent. None of this is a done deal yet. But Mangione's expected plea comes less than a month before he's scheduled to stand trial in a separate case, a state murder case. And the parties involved here, well, they're not talking. Mangione's lawyers, the Justice Department, a spokesperson for the court, they've all declined to comment. So, what do we know about what has changed for Luigi Mangione, and could this impact his state murder trial? For that, I want to bring in NBC News legal analyst Misty Marris. Misty, you are the person we need to talk to here because this is so complicated. We're going to take it step by step for everyone so they can try to follow along with us here. We start with our reporting, which is that he is expected to plead guilty in the federal case. I say expected because it's not a done deal. A judge would have to sign off. And most importantly, we do not know what he is pleading guilty to, assuming he does it.
Right, absolutely. And this is what's really interesting because you've got this federal case that the federal government came at with such
gusto.
It was so aggressive. They're seeking the death penalty. Death penalty gets thrown out. Case gets narrowed. Have these two stalking charges that are left. So the question is, when you're talking about a plea deal, it usually means there's some type of bargaining going on, right?
Both
there
sides
has
get
to be
something.
incentive. Yes. What's the incentive for prosecutors to come to the table? There's, of course, the uncertainty of trial. That is always going to be a factor. You never know the way things are actually going to play out. It's always a gamble to a certain degree.
Especially in a case like this where there is an enormous amount of public support for him, whether people think that's right or wrong, there is.
Yes, and when you're talking about seating a jury, now this is the Southern District, so you've got jurors coming from Manhattan, Bronx, Westchester, and some of the northern New York counties, so you're pulling a different pool than would be for the state case. Still, there's this movement online for jury nullification. Luigi Mangione, you don't know whether or not you're going to get a jury who's going to come in without bias. So saving judicial resources, if there's the possibility of a plea, all of those things are very, very valid and things federal prosecutors think about all the time. There's another aspect to this, though, Laura.
A legal aspect.
A very legal aspect, and it's getting into the actual statute that we're talking about, which travels interstate commerce for the purpose of intending to kill, injure, harass, intimidate. Okay, fine. I think from what we know about the case, we can picture putting together those elements traveling from Georgia to New York and all of the pieces that we kind of know publicly.
The thing we've never known is, did Brian Thompson know that he was being stalked?
Right. And so that's an element of the statute that the conduct the defendant engages in places that person, meaning in this case Brian Thompson, in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury. Attempts to cause or would reasonably be expected to cause substantial emotional distress to a person. The person described in that paragraph, that to Brian Thompson. So I don't know. And I'm sure the SDNY has thought it through. This was not dismissed before going to court. So they clearly have some evidence that they would present to a jury that they believe would satisfy that particular requirement of the statute. But I don't know what it is. I don't think we've seen publicly any evidence that Brian Thompson knew that Luigi Mangione was stalking him, knew anything about the plan, or that Luigi Mangione was even somebody in his sphere. Who knows what would have come out at trial? But my question is, when you're talking about why federal prosecutors might come to the table, is that a vulnerability potentially that they see in the case? They won't be able to establish that element. And even if the jurors found him guilty, hypothetically, we're a million years down the road, that it would have a significant vulnerability in the appellate process. So I think all of that is something that federal prosecutors are thinking about. Now, for Luigi Mangione.
What does he get out of this?
Right. Well, he's got incentive to entertain and engage in plea negotiations with the federal government specifically, especially with the state court case looming, and a couple of reasons. So first, the big question is, what would the federal government be willing to offer him as for what type of penalty would be at play if he were to plead guilty to these federal charges? We don't know that piece of it, right?
Because the stalking charge that's out there right now is serious. He would be facing life in prison.
Exactly.
So you would think he would be pleading to something short of that, or at least something that would trigger a recommendation short of that.
Yes. So if there is something on the table that is beneficial to him because it's something less than life, right, and gets rid of this federal case so it's not looming in the background, he can actually use this plea to try and get the entire state case thrown out. New York State case and maybe Pennsylvania case too, although we don't even talk about that one because that's not the level of severity.
Put Pennsylvania aside.
But the New York State case, try and get this thrown out because the standard for double jeopardy in New York is way more expansive than it is under the federal law. So why now is kind of the big question. Well, because the state case is scheduled to move forward in the beginning of September, and it only works this way, meaning pleading to the federal case could potentially get rid of the state case. It doesn't work the other way around. Right. So the state case disposition, the federal case would charge forward regardless.
This is why the timing has always really mattered to him.
Absolutely. And why, if you remember, we've been covering this case together for a long time. There was a lot of push-pull about which case would go first. And it was the defense that actually wanted the federal case to go first for this very reason.
Because they've all the way, since the very beginning of time, have been screaming about double jeopardy.
Every turn.
Every step of the way. And it has never gotten any traction. The difference now is that if he actually pleads guilty and actually has a conviction for something arising from the same core event, then that's sort of the jeopardy that could attach that at least is going to allow them to make the argument, not a done deal, but allow them to make the argument that he cannot be prosecuted in New York State, having been convicted in federal court in New York from the same core incident.
Yes, same transaction and occurrence. That will be the argument that the defense will make if, in fact, this plea deal goes through like we think it might tomorrow, that I think you'll probably see almost an immediate action by the defense. Yeah. Now, there's a carve-out for that, though.
There are exceptions. There's always exceptions to the rule.
By the way, there's never anything black and white in the law.
Never.
So we always have a gray area. And the exception is that the statute for the second prosecution, which would be the state prosecution in this case, seeks to remedy a different type of harm or has different elements.
Because the federal case is stalking.
Right.
The state case is second-degree murder. Right. Those are different charges, different harms, different elements, different law, different everything. That's what the prosecutors are going to say.
And that's going to be the prosecution's hook. So this isn't going to be Luigi Mangione pled guilty and, okay, Judge Caro says, let's tear up all these indictments and go home. There's going to be just another legal fight about whether or not double jeopardy actually attaches underneath these circumstances.
And Judge Caro actually has a pretty big decision to make here, which is inevitably going to get appealed if somebody is unhappy with it, which don't you think most definitely means this trial is not happening on September 8th?
I think it would be highly unlikely if everything plays out this way that the trial will move forward on September 8th. The defense would actually have to ask to pause the trial and seek what's called a stay, which would put the pause button on. And the requirements for a stay are irreparable harm. Really easy to articulate that, right?
Yes.
Luigi Mangione shouldn't go through a trial if he's potentially
innocent.
His constitutional right of double jeopardy would be violated, so he should not move forward. The second is likelihood of success on the merits of the underlying issue, that underlying issue being these arguments on double jeopardy. We'll have to see what happens tomorrow, but if there is, in fact, a plea deal, it's going to be so consequential. And I actually think with regard to this double jeopardy issue, it's going to be something that could actually impact cases moving forward, too. And that's kind of the interesting part about it. We have so much focus on this case. This is a very important case. All eyes are on it. But every single one of these cases actually has consequences for the criminal justice system generally.
I hope you're prepared to be attached at the hip with me for the next 24 hours because
I am ready.
We have a lot to unpack. Misty, Marris, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Laura.
If you followed the money in this year's midterms, you can trace plenty of it back to super PACs aligned with the cryptocurrency industry. But they don't seem to be loyal to any one party. In fact, 3 crypto-aligned super PACs have spent tens of millions of dollars supporting a mix of Democrats and Republicans. And these super PACs don't just have an industry in common. An OpenSecrets investigation found that 2 of them actually share a treasurer and a headquarters. All this month, we're taking a look at money in the midterms, and especially the new players getting involved, who they're supporting, how they're doing it, and what policy outcomes they're actually going for. So today we're looking at the crypto industry's push to change the role it plays in our financial system. For more on all this, I'm joined now by Joedy, McCreary, senior reporter at OpenSecrets. Hey, Joedy.
Hey, how are you?
Great to talk to you about this. Great reporting. As we mentioned, we have these 3 main crypto super PACs. Walk me through the different groups and the connections between them that you found in your reporting.
Sure, the connections between them are vast. One expert that I spoke to for the story said that while there are 3 of them, it's best to treat them as one organization. The main one, perhaps, is Fair Shake, and that's the one that sort of brings all the money in from Coinbase, from the venture capital firms that fund it, and that one is connected to other super PACs that have very non-crypto sounding names like Defend America's Jobs or Protect Progress. Those are sort of the 3 big ones, and they're all really connected because Defend America's Jobs and Protect Progress, most of their revenue, most of the receipts they have come from in transfers from Fair Shake. So Fair Shake will take the money in from whether it's Coinbase or Ripple Labs or Andreessen Horowitz, those sort of the main funders, either crypto exchange companies or venture capital firms, and then they will distribute some of it to those other 2 super PACs to spend, as they see fit, to support or to oppose candidates they see as either helpful or harmful to the crypto industry.
I think that the thing that will surprise people is that the super PACs are actually backing both Democrats and Republicans. Is there, though, a specific type of profile of a candidate that they want to put their money behind?
They generally want someone who will either be crypto friendly or is seen as being crypto friendly. And the candidate doesn't even have had to have addressed crypto in the past. It's looking at voting records, looking at speeches, they're looking at statements they've made, but a lot of times they're also just taking their best educated guess as to what they think, because some of the candidates may not have actually addressed these issues in public, but they're gauging whether or not they think down the road they will.
So the central piece of legislation that these groups are pushing for is something called the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act. It's a mouthful. What would that act mean for the industry should it pass?
Sure. The main thing that it does is it would legitimize crypto as a more legitimate piece of the financial puzzle in America. And it would also set up a regulatory framework that would be standard across the country, because as it stands now, there really isn't a legislative, a law that governs regulation for crypto. It's left to perhaps more of a piecemeal, state by state kind of thing. So this would make it more uniform, and it would divide sort of those crypto tokens into 3 separate buckets, and a different agency would regulate them, whether it's the SEC for one bucket and the CFTC for another. It would give a little more clearer definition as to who's keeping track of these things, and it would legitimize it. And it would also codify a lot of these protections and this framework so that, maybe down the line, a future administration who might not be as crypto friendly can't simply roll it back. Critics of the measure are afraid that there are loopholes in it that could, jeopardize people's 401ks or other investments that are tied into the crypto industry. And they're also concerned about conflicts of interest among people voting on this legislation who have financial stakes in crypto.
President Trump has said he wants to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. He's taken certain steps, including signing this executive order that supports crypto exposure in 401k plans even. So if the crypto industry could manage to get more people in office that would support things like that, among others, it wouldn't take that many more people, I would think, to add to Congress, right?
Correct. The balance is shifting. The crypto industry has kept an eye on where the Clarity Act stands. They were hoping that it would get some traction in July before the recess. That didn't happen, so now they're targeting the return from recess in the fall. But yes, it wouldn't take a whole lot to make it happen.
So talk about what a big change that would be for people, right? Right now, if you want to get into crypto on your own dime, fine. But actually wading into people's 401ks would be a big change.
Absolutely. As one expert I spoke to for this story told me, that even if, you don't hold crypto yourself, as this is going to impact everyone's life, because if crypto has a growing presence in the financial picture of the country, whether it's people's 401k programs or Fannie Mae is accepting crypto-backed mortgages, it's going to touch a lot of areas of daily life. So even if you don't have a crypto.com account, it's still going to affect you, and you still need to be aware of the forces behind a lot of these ads and a lot of this spending for these elections when you go to the voters booth, either in your primary or in the general election in November.
Joedy, McCreary, thank you. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Women make the first move. For years, it was the signature rule on the dating app Bumble. The company's big pitch was that women messaging first would create empowering relationships by starting things off on equal footing. But this week, it all changed. The company said that rule is out the window. They're going to allow men now to start conversations with women first. It also said it was going to give people 72 hours to respond to those first messages, essentially extending the time window from the original 24. Now, I have been out of the dating game for a minute here. I'm not sure if I ever really was, so I need to bring in an expert to help me out. NBC News culture and tech reporter Angela Yang is our gal today. Hey, Angela.
Hey, it's nice to be here.
So nice to talk to you about this. So help me out. How is the company explaining this big change?
Yeah, I mean, Bumble's CEO says that, Bumble is still women first, and that would be about, quote, designing an experience with women's needs in mind to create better outcomes for everyone. And so Bumble is saying that when they surveyed women, about 2/3 said that they actually prefer men to send the first message.
So what are these changes actually going to mean for the average user?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of building off of something that Bumble has already been doing, which is that women can actually already set prompts called opening moves that are for men to answer. And so in that way, they can actually message first. But this change makes it so that in any heterosexual match, a man can message first without waiting for a woman to message. This obviously means that Bumble loses its big differentiator. Like when you think of Bumble, you think like, oh, well, that's the app that makes women message first. Although I will say for gay men and sapphic women, both parties have always been able to message each other. So this really only affects heterosexual matches.
As someone who uses Bumble, this is interesting. In a way, I look at it as that it kind of did feel special when a girl would actually send the first message in a way as a guy myself.
And by some mysterious twist of fate, I've currently matched with 10 different men. 36 hours has already lapsed, and not a single one of them has sent the first message.
At this point, maybe we should build an app where nobody messages first.
Of course, Bumble's survey says otherwise, but people are saying, well, now what makes Bumble different from Tinder or Hinge or, any of its competitors? And so, people online are not necessarily excited about the change, it seems like.
What do you think the business pressures are that are driving this change?
Yeah, I mean, the online dating sector hasn't been doing too amazingly. There's been pretty slow growth. There are reports that Bumble might be exploring a sale. And Bumble also laid off about 30% of its global workforce last year. So it's been, it's been not great for dating apps, especially with the resurgence of in-person dating and people kind of getting tired of online dating in general.
Are we seeing other dating app companies making other changes, trying to accommodate to, people's shifting desires and the like, trying to keep up with the current environment?
Yeah, I mean, notably, Tinder began rolling out its in-person events feature earlier this year, which piloted in Los Angeles. But, Tinder and Bumble have both been playing around with setting people up on in-person meetups because I think that dating apps do feel like that is the next big arena, which sounds funny because people for most of human history have met in person. And, eventually people, there's a whole new slew of AI-enabled dating apps now. So people are always going to be testing out the next new thing. And yeah, we'll just have to see what sticks.
What are people on TikTok saying about this? How are people feeling?
I mean, online, the reactions have been pretty mixed. A lot of people are criticizing the change, saying like, well, what does that mean for Bumble's identity? People went to Bumble because they knew that this was an app that made it so women have to message first. That has an appeal to some people.
Angela Yang, thank you.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for us at Here's the Scoop from NBC News. I'm Laura Jarrett in the chair for Yasmin Vousoughian. We'll be back tomorrow with whatever the day may bring. If you like what you heard, press subscribe. See you back here tomorrow.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.